Many people find themselves overwhelmed by reading for a university degree. It can be difficult to know where to start when faced with a long reading list or dozens of articles which all seem relevant to your essay topic. It can also be difficult to know when to stop. How do you know you've done enough reading? Also, how do you make sure you're reading in the right way and not just passively noting down everything that seems remotely relevant to your work? What even is the right way to read? Managing your reading involves thinking strategically about the way you approach it. We often talk about reading at university as if it's just one thing, but actually there are lots of different ways to read. Suiting these to your own purpose is key to making sure you stay focused and keep your reading streamlined and manageable. What this involves is first thinking about what you're looking to get from your reading so that you can decide not just what you're going to read, but also the way you're going to read it. Designing an effective strategy means thinking about the type of reading you're going to be doing, how much of the text you need or want to read, and the order you're going to approach it in. Once you've finished reading, it can be useful to have some idea of how you're going to process your thoughts so that you're ready to make use of your reading in assignments or discussion groups. When you do this, it can be useful to think of your reading as a layered process. It's not always helpful to dive in and start doing in-depth critical reading on a topic right from the outset. You may find that you first need to build your knowledge and find out what's out there. This reading might involve looking at less difficult texts, such as textbooks or online encyclopedias, to help gain an understanding of the subject before looking at more academic sources. It might involve looking at abstracts or quickly skimming a few papers to help work out what's worth reading in more depth. Or it might mean looking for specific facts or ideas to fill gaps in your knowledge. This reading is much less in-depth than critical reading. Critical reading might involve reading to make connections between different sources to help you identify debates, make decisions about the validity of certain ideas or claims, or build a case for your own position. This reading will involve careful questioning of the texts you read. Note that research is often a messy process, and you'll sometimes find you have to interrupt your more in-depth reading and go back to reading for knowledge when you encounter new ideas or concepts that you're struggling to understand. The key is being aware of the difference between the different kinds of reading so that you aren't just applying the same approach to each text. Next, you'll need to think about the most appropriate way to navigate the text. Academic literature doesn't need to be read from beginning to end, in depth, or even in order. You're free to decide what approach you use. Are you going to skim read to get through the text quickly, or would it be better to read carefully and in more depth? You might even do both, skim reading some parts and reading the most relevant sections in more depth. You don't even necessarily need to read the whole thing. It's completely okay to only read the relevant parts of the text, perhaps after a quick skim to work out which parts these are, or even just a few lines if you're looking for the answer to something very specific. You also don't need to read the text in a linear order. Sometimes it can be helpful to start at the end so you know where the argument is going before going back to look at earlier sections. Therefore, you're free to skim texts to find relevant bits of information, get a general overview of the argument, or identify parts to read in more depth later. Read the abstract, intro and conclusion to get a sense of the key points or check if the text meets your needs. Read the first and last line of each paragraph to map out the main thread of the argument. Read just the most relevant sections of the text in depth to critique them. Read the text in the order that works for you, for example, starting with the conclusion and then looking back at the methods, discussion, or other sections to understand how they got there. Reread the same text multiple times, maybe skim reading it initially and then coming back to read it or parts of it in more depth later. Once you've finished with the text, it's worth spending some time processing your reading to help make connections between the ideas you're encountering and generate questions to follow up next. For example, you might want to take 5 minutes to quickly summarise the main points, think about how they relate to other things you've seen, and reflect on where this leaves you. What might you say about this in your assignment, or what might you need to read next to develop your thinking even further? This can help you develop your thinking on the topic, get comfortable writing about the literature, and see the path your research needs to take next. Another advantage is that you'll have a better sense of whether you've read enough material or whether you still have some unanswered questions about the topic.